Welcome to My Favorite Video Game, episode number 2. My name is Josh Gallegos, and I am editor of the Games U blog, here to discuss the weekly news with you, everything that's been going on, the biggest stories in gaming this week. And my, oh my, there has been a lot going on. Before I get into all that, though, I do want to kind of reiterate some of the things that I was talking about last week. Again, I am Josh Gallegos. This is a podcast for the Games U blog. Every week, we're going to talk about news, breakdowns, of course, and then also get into a game of the week, a favorite video game. It's not even a highlight that has anything to do with recent releases, typically. Last week, I talked about Wario Master of Disguise, which came out in 2007. So it's not necessarily going to be a relevant game. They're just games that I think are interesting, that are valuable, that are going to be a cool little nugget or tidbit, or maybe even your next favorite video game. After I talk about it, maybe it's something you seem interested in. There's a lot of games out there. There's a treasure trove, as it were. And because of that, we have a lot of different things that we can dive deep into. And so we need to know which ones are good. Which ones are going to be the bang for our buck, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to be trying to highlight some games and talk about them in that way. Of course, the name My Favorite Video Game I want to use to also develop into an interview series where I can talk to other people and get their favorite video games. And then in that case, the title actually becomes about their favorite video game, in which case it is their episode. And that's kind of the idea behind that. In any case, moving on into everything that's going on this week, let's go ahead and look at one particular thing, starting off. And when I say look, I am referring specifically to the YouTube audience, which of right now is 0. I think right now I'm getting the most views on SoundCloud, so thank you to SoundCloud listeners. If you guys are there, you listening, hit that like button. It really does help us out. Really does help engage audiences and get people to see us even. So if you're enjoying what's going on, then go ahead and do that. But if you want to see what I'm talking about and all these different stories, go ahead and go over to our YouTube channel, Games U. We have a video cast version. We talk about these things, show the different trailers as we go through them. I'm going to be uploading clips as well. So hopefully you're able to get all caught up in that way. Only click on the things that you like and move on from then. So, with that in mind, game announcements this week. There were a couple, and I want to get them out of the way. Total War Saga, Troy announced. Now, Total War is a strategy series that's been around for quite a while. I think even maybe a decade. But they've had a lot of different iterations. I think they're mostly PC-centric type games. But which means like computer games that are played with a mouse, a keyboard, they're really strategic, in depth. And Total War has a lot of different iterations that have come about. This is the most recent. This trailer, though, actually got me incredibly excited. I am a history buff. Actually, I went to college for history, interestingly enough, and I'm not doing that right now. But that's because I wanted to pursue this particular aspect of my life for now. I have not lost my love of history, nor my desire to teach it. And so seeing this game come up was really exciting for me, because historical games aren't always the most exciting. And sometimes they're, a little bit off from the original story. But Total War has been great about adapting things. And in fact, if you go watch the trailer for this, you can even see how they've adapted the Greek geography of the time, which was different from how it is now slightly. It's still generically the same, but 3,000 plus years ago, it would be a little bit geographically different with water and stuff like that going on. In any case, they adapt this setting, this idea of Troy. And if you know anything about Troy, quick breakdown, it's from Homer's Iliad. Of course, Achilles goes in, he's fighting the Trojan War. They had the big Troy movie with Brad Pitt, if you know what I'm talking about. This game is based on that type of setting. It's I don't know if it's going to be covering Achilles necessarily. The Trojan Wars were multiple. Achilles was only a part of the first one, from what I understand. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to incorporate specific elements of Homer or anything like that, but it is trying to capture the actual warring aspects between these two nations, and it's kind of cool. I'm excited to see more of it. I've never been interested in a Total Wars game, but they got me with this Troy hook, so I'm going to see going forward if there is anything else I can delve into with it and really gain from this series, because I am beginning to get my interest piqued thanks to this trailer. The other thing that was announced this week that I found somewhat interesting was a game called Terminator Resistance. Terminator Resistance is a concurrent game with the upcoming movie. So this is actually a movie licensed game. It's not based on the movie's plot, I don't think. I honestly have no clue, but they are going to be concurrent in releases. And this is something we haven't seen in a while, where people are trying to sync up movie and game releases. That was a big deal back in like the PlayStation 2 era, even the beginning of the PlayStation 3 era. You had movie licensed games, and most of them are pretty crappy. This one actually looks decent. The company behind it seems like they know what they're doing, that they're big Terminator super fans. Me personally, I'm not. I do like the series, and of course I think I've seen the first two, and then I saw the one with Christian Bale, which actually this game looks like. It looks like it's in that setting as opposed to the older game. So it's actually in the future, and it looks all gray and muddy, which I didn't care for. So I'm curious to see how they adapt it, because maybe they saw some potential there and are waiting to mine it and really get deep into the story and say, no, there was more that we could get into. It looks like you're your own character. You'll probably run into, of course, the T-2800 or whatever the heck that guy is, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And you'll probably do a bunch of different things like that, little homages. But it looks like it'll be interesting, and the developers behind that seem like they love Terminator. They know their stuff, and they're trying to deliver something cool. So I'm going to keep my eye on it. Probably won't be picking it up on launch day, but who knows? Guess we'll see. Next news story this week. I am flying through these because I have a lot to get through, okay? So let's go ahead and move on to actually what could potentially be the biggest piece of news this week. A leaked E3 pitch for next year, 2020. Now, the proposal for the E3 pitch starts out pleasantly enough, and it seems like they're trying to re-strategize how they're putting together this giant conference that goes on every single year. This historically relevant games conference, E3, has been going on since the games industry really started to get footing underneath it, and it has only grown in magnitude until the last couple years. They've made a couple decisions where the conference itself has begun to morph from a press conference into more of an event, an expo, like you'd go to like at a Comic-Con or something. So it's not quite Comic-Con, but it's starting to take on elements of those kinds of things. And so people are starting to get a bit upset, and now they're beginning to kind of bring that back. They have scheduled a specific press day, but there's more to the story than meets the eye. And I actually only heard about this through a particular group that I love called the Easy Allies. I'm a big fan. I support them on Patreon, and they had a really good clip, I think, explaining and breaking down this particular moment. So I'm going to go ahead and play it here. Audio listeners, go ahead and listen up. I'm going to turn this up as best I can. But of course, you can see the video on YouTube as well if you want to follow it there. But this is their breakdown. The Easy Allies are a games critic group that have been around for quite some time. They used to be of GameTrailers.com fame, and they transitioned after their site was closed into the Easy Allies group now. They're influencers, they're YouTubers, they're on Patreon. They're that kind of crew, and they're great. I love them so much. They're incredibly knowledgeable. So let's go ahead and listen to these guys. This is Kyle Bossman, Brandon Jones, Daniel Bloodworth, and Michael Damiani.
Do you want to get in that then?
Yes,
just right now? Let's go into that.
Yeah. Do you want to read the bullet point, or do you want me to say what it is?
I want you to dig into what you're upset about.
So they have this. There's a bullet point or a passage in there that basically says they want to control the message.
Yes.
And they want to control the media by basically.
I can actually read that out loud.
Yeah. Go ahead and read their own word. Or yeah, what was it?
I didn't get this deep. Wow.
Yeah, this is bad.
Yes, this is like it is. truly crazy. So sorry, that one is like almost toward the end.
Sure.
Okay. Paid media partnerships. Create paid media partnerships with major outlets that exponentially increase the reach of E3 and its exhibitors. Enables ESA to control content and the message. Final bullet point. CNBC Tech Impact was a proof of concept that enabled ESA to build the show, own the content, and distribute it nationally. Now, Game Daily did a really good thing. They actually like looked for that show. It's not on CNBC. It's apparently on like Fox Business or in one other channel.
Okay.
But it was
Weird.
like this one show that said sponsored content like in the show's intro or something, but did not explicitly say the ESA paid us money to say these things. So Damiani's saying like, that slide right there, that's already like a headline.
Sure.
They want to buy coverage.
But they can't. I mean, yeah, but
They did.
I know, but people sniff that out. Like I don't see them being
Well, I mean, it's not just
stealthy
sniffed
about
out.
it.
I
Like,
mean, it says right up front that's what it is. But
Yeah,
it's still
but the
getting-
problem is like it's the
Yeah.
attitude, the audacity of them to think that they could start doing. They still haven't even addressed like previous controversy, the ongoing controversy of them mishandling all this private information
on
and
their own private information
and
now.
their own stuff and like publisher information, and still haven't really said anything other than we'll do something about it. Trust us. And it's like, no, that's the whole point. We don't trust you. Like, why? That whole thing still exists, and now they're moving on to like, so let's see what other things we. To me, the ESA has been really problematic in its ties to E3. It feels like they are just trying to figure out more ways to make E3 bigger, but the ESA benefiting the most from it. It doesn't feel like they're doing it for the good of the industry anymore. It feels like they're doing it for the good of themselves and money. Everything, all these decisions they keep making reek of, we just need to make more money because we have publishers backing out of E3. So what do we got to do? Let's get influencers to come and add more public people so we can recoup the losses that way, even though everyone's bailing out. I don't want to dominate this too much, but I just want to say, I want to say this in my little mini rant here.
So I think Damiani here has a lot of really good points. He's pointing out the flaws in ESA's handling of the situation. And in fact, they go on to break down the story even further and talk about specific lines and just like the bull crap behind them. It's really interesting. So I would recommend that. That's the Easy Allies podcast, number 180. You can find that on podcast services or YouTube. And I think it goes live on Sunday, actually, because I have early access. In any case, thought that was great and just wanted to put that out there. That's, of course, for me, it's not going to affect me personally. I watch it for the news. News is going to happen anyway. I'm happy regardless. I don't go to the industry events. I would love to in the future, and maybe at that point, this would start to affect me more. Right now, it is disappointing. I see it, and I recognize that other people are getting frustrated, and people have been incredibly close to E3 and have been there for years, going every single year, covering every game. This is a change that is going to fundamentally shift the industry in a totally different direction. But E3 is somewhat of a relic. Like, things have already been changing in the past. Nintendo kind of backed out from their own conference a while ago. Sony backed out this last year. So it's been kind of a train that's been slowing down, and I don't think that's an issue. Like, for me, it's like, yeah, okay, we lost that moment. But that moment is something we can enjoy looking back on now. And the whole industry has totally changed from that sort of setup. So why are we still sticking with it? We can totally get a whole lot more out of the other options that we have. We have live streams now from Twitch. You can just put up a whole video like Nintendo does every single year. And now other producers and people are beginning to get their own news days and spread out their own announcements. And sometimes that's bad. And I know there is a cadence to the way that you handle that sort of thing in advertising. You have to be able to handle that correctly and time out trends and things like that. I know there's a whole system to it. I know it's not that easy. But at the same time, I really don't see the need for E3 as much as it used to be. I still think it's important. I still think it's a moment of hype for the industry, and I love it to death. I watch it every single year. But I'm okay with it changing. I think its time has passed, and I think it's okay for it to kind of shift into something else. Although the way that they're handling it is a bit unfortunate. In any case, moving on to the next article from this week. that I read that was very interesting, and I'm not really sure how to feel about. Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be implementing a classic mode, which means, in all intents and purposes, for those people who have no idea what any of that means, that this game, Final Fantasy VII, which is incredibly popular in gaming culture for years, obviously it's hailed as one of the most influential games of all time, one of the most epic games of all time, blah, blah, blah. You know, you hear that about a lot of different games. This one, old, looks bad now. I can't even stand to look at the old one. I didn't play it growing up, so I didn't have any attachment to it as a young person. Now that I'm older, I was able to dive into the original game, and I do enjoy the mechanics, the gameplay, even the storytelling is great. It's still an awesome, wonderful game, but it does not look good at all. So they're remaking it, and in fact, they're rehauling it in more ways than one. And one of the biggest ways that they begin to change Final Fantasy VII as they've begun to bring it into 2020, I guess, is when it's going to come out, is their gameplay, specifically the battle system. So in JRPGs, it's a big deal, the kind of battle system that you put into it. And there are a whole lot of different kinds that you can implement. They, in the original, implemented a more traditional turn-based battle system, which means that you take your turn, you're able to manage your inventory, pick out what you're going to do, strategize. It's more of a board game at that point in a way, or like a game of chess, or just a game of strategy. And those kinds of games are prolific, they're fantastic, and they can be a lot of fun. They've begun to make Final Fantasy VII not like a turn-based, but instead more like an active action game where you can begin actively putting together moves. Of course, they still have elements of JRPG in there, but interestingly enough, it was a really unique move, and I thought that it was going to pay off because it was going to give almost a different experience to the game. But now they're saying that they're going to add the original version in, or the original kind of gameplay in anyway, which I say, okay, cool. Great. But I could see the issue that a lot of people had, and the things that I was seeing, most people had the issue of just, why did you take it out in the first place? Why did you try to switch it out? Why are you going back on your word now? Why didn't you stick to your guns? You know, for me, I think, okay, cool, more options. But at the same time, it is kind of weird the way they handled it. And I'm curious to see if it's not going to do anything to the game itself. More options is never bad. Nobody should really be mad about that. But in any case, it is a curious thing, and I am interested to see what more of the game is developed, what other parts of it are preserved or changed, and what we get with the final product. GameStop, speaking of products, is revamping their whole idea of what they are because of their tragic loss. So there have been multiple stories recently of GameStop posting losses, closing down stores. Of course, they are a giant company, so they're not completely doomed. And so they're beginning to try to shift things around and consolidate resources and re-identify themselves. And one of the things they've begun to do is swap up their stores. They want to try to make these stores into like gaming hubs, like centers for gamers where they can come hang out as opposed to just a store. So it's kind of weird. And this week, a test store of this new kind of line, this new kind of store is a test store video was released, and it was interesting to see. They had a giant TV on one wall and a couch so you could sit and play new games. Of course, they had the games, and then they had a ton of extra merch, which they've already been shifting into in the last couple of years. Just handing out a lot of game merch, working with game companies to make more merch. And then also in the back, they literally had a giant setup of CRTVs, old TVs, with Nintendo 64s and other old systems plugged into them to play. And you had like your own setup. You could get little headphones and everything. It's kind of crazy. And it seems like an interesting idea. Personally, though, I don't think I'd go. I mean, like, maybe as a novelty, as an interest, like, oh, yeah, like, maybe we're out for the day, or we stopped at another spot, and maybe I wanted to pick up a game, and in the meantime, maybe I'll stop and jump around in Mario 64 or something. Like, it's not something I'm abhorred by, but at the same time, I don't really see how this is going to help them. I'm curious to see if it works. They also said that they're going to be trying to put in a lot of different kinds of stores. So maybe one is more gameplay centric, one is more retro centric, one is more esports centric, what have you, so that you can draw different crowds, I guess is the goal. I'm just curious to see how that works across a nation in a physical storefront, you know? Like Unity is usually what works because you're able to identify that, but maybe they've been around enough that they can make this transition and it sticks. So we'll see. But in any case, very interesting, and you can actually look up that test store video on Facebook. In any case, the announcement of Sirfetch'd. Sirfetch'd is the official evolution of Farfetch'd from Pokemon. Do you understand what I'm saying? No? Yes? You should. Sirfetch'd is amazing. Google him right now. He has a great looking shield. He's got a leek for a sword, which is a translation of Farfetch'd, who always was carrying a leek. They've been trying to get him to evolve for forever. Of course, in the Pokemon series, you collect Pokemon, and as you keep them and as you begin to battle with them, they improve and they evolve into different forms. Pikachu becomes Raichu, other ones. But now they have this, Sirfetch'd. And he is, of course, tied into Pokemon Sword and Shield, coming out this year in November or December. I should probably know that. But it's a game that's based on actually Great Britain. So they're going with a very, I guess, like Middle Ages-ish aesthetic on top of the fact that it's modern Britain. So really trying to hone in on some of the historical heritage that's built into that island there. And Sirfetch'd is all over the news these days. I just put Pokemon Sword and Shield into Google, and he's literally every single page. So look him up. He's great. And read them things, because I'm excited to catch Sirfetch'd. Or actually, I guess you evolve him. So catch Farfetch'd and evolve him to Sirfetch'd. Call of Duty has crossplay. What? Okay. Crossplay is a new concept, newish within the last couple of years that has really begun to catch hold. And I think the fact that I just said Call of Duty, well, Modern Warfare, the one that's coming up, will have crossplay is a fundamental shift, I think. Because not only does it have it, but Sony, Microsoft, Steam, I guess, they all agreed, let's do it. Let's freaking, they gave him the go ahead. They didn't have that before, and now all of a sudden they do because of the way that the culture is shifting. And I think that's incredibly exciting to see. Crossplay, of course, opens up the amount of games you can connect to, the amount of people that you can connect to, the amount of skill that you can interact with. I know growing up, whenever my brother would play Call of Duty 4 on the PlayStation 3, he would destroy because everyone on the PlayStation 3 sucked, because everyone on the PlayStation 3 didn't buy Call of Duty because they were good. They bought it because their friends had it or something. All the good players were on Xbox because that's where all the competition was. And that's where all the everything was tied. Basically, Xbox players were so much better because they were in that ecosystem. And so my brother, switching over to Xbox, recognized that and was able to grow in that way. But because of the fact that he hadn't had access to it until then, he had a hard going of it at first. Now, in this day and age, with games like Fortnite, with games like Minecraft, you can connect on multiple platforms. It doesn't matter what piece of plastic the computer is tied into anymore. Instead, all it matters is that you got the game. And that's awesome. I think that's so exciting. And with Call of Duty coming up, I'm really encouraged with all the news coming out, except one particular piece. And I honestly don't have the strongest opinion either way about this particular item of news, but if you go on to IGN.com, there is a particular article that was released this last week about Call of Duty, and it's white phosphorus effect, kill streak. And there's a whole breakdown about what white phosphorus is, which I didn't 100% know, and call me ignorant. I guess I just didn't really pay attention to the growing use of war items, war weapons. What am I freaking trying to say? In any case, the white phosphorus kill streak that's being included in the Call of Duty Modern Warfare game releasing later this year is apparently ticking people off, because white phosphorus is in fact a horrible, horrible thing. It melts your skin. It's awful. Like, if you read the article on IGN, it's totally gross the way that they describe it. It explodes your lungs and all these terrible things. In any case, they use it in Modern Warfare now. The guy who writes it is an Army vet who experienced it first, or not himself, but saw what happened when it was used. So it's an interesting thing, and I can see why people would be upset about it being there. But then, of course, you get all the people that are saying, well, what about nukes? Well, what about the actual guns? Like, people are still dying. But the argument I've been hearing is, it's okay, well, that's fine, but nuke is kind of a crazy thing. Those happen. Like, we haven't had a nuke go off in a long time, since the World War II. So we don't even know what that, like, our concept of that is like ancient history now. None of us have experienced a nuke. So in that, it's almost like a game thing. Like, it's almost like a goofy game mechanic, even though it is a real thing that could destroy people. I don't know. That argument's kind of weird. That is one argument that I've heard, though. I'm just putting it out there. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's a little interesting, though. Or I've also heard, hey, this is a particularly awful way to die, so it doesn't matter. And I guess war is war, Like, it's an awful thing. Both sides are doing terrible things to each other, and hopefully someday we can work out our differences. I don't think it's ever going to happen because we're people. But until then, I'm not saying we shouldn't work towards something. Don't take me wrong in that regard. But until then, war is war. Like, I get it. Like, I get why this sort of thing is in use, and I also get why you'd be upset about it being put into a video game. But it's a video game about war. And that's where I'm kind of confused. It's like, so you want it to be just happy play gun war? Or do you want to see the real thing? Now, here's the sticking point, and this is where I agree. The way that it's implemented. So in the game, and I'm not saying that it should be, I don't think it should be implemented at all. Personally, I think they should just take it out or change the name, because the way it's implemented isn't even how white phosphorus works. It's literally just like a smoke thing that, like, blurs your senses, and I think it, like, slowly it disorients you or whatever. It's not even actual white phosphorus. So it's the name alone, and people are upset about that. So, I mean, at this point, you might as well just change the name, because it's not actually what it is, and call it good. And I'm not saying, like, if you have white phosphorus in your game, make it as worse as it's possible. Like, actually portray white phosphorus and have people having their skin ripped off from their flesh bones protruding from beneath and their eyes dropping down into globs of jelly. I'm making these up as I go along, but this white phosphorus controversy is interesting. And on my side, I see both. I guess on my end, I see both sides. And I think that either way, you're going to have an issue, and maybe just remove the freaking thing, Like, save yourself, Call of Duty. Or maybe people don't care. I don't care that much. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Like, I know that might sound cold-hearted and awful, but I don't. Like, I didn't even know what white phosphorus was until this article. I don't know what half the guns are in Call of Duty. That's not why I play it. And if they didn't show something horrific and graphic, I wouldn't know either. And maybe that's me being ignorant, and maybe that's not okay. But it would have been the case. And so, I don't know. Like, I didn't care before. I still don't care. And I'm probably still going to play it because it's fun. I like Call of Duty. I've played it my whole life. In any case, moving on. I'm going to have to cut some of these. Starting with Fortnite cross Batman. Screw that. Actually, I love the fact that they're able to cross with Batman. But I don't know if it's going to really pull me in personally. The Borderlands thing things seemed more interesting, but that's because I'm a video game guy. Okay, the fact that they even are making these crazy, like, totally opposite sides of the spectrum deals, and then also anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about it. But Fortnite Cross Batman came out. You guys can play that update. Looks kind of cool, actually, even though I don't like Fortnite. Zombies are in Red Dead 2. I'm going to skip that one. Ni no Kuni got released. We're going to say bye-bye to Nino. But that's just because I'm still playing it. Maybe I can give you guys impressions next week. I'm going to do that. We're going to do Ni no Kuni impressions next week. Pay attention to those because I've never played the game before, and so I'm really excited to experience it for the first time. And maybe if you haven't played it before and you want to experience it for the first time, you can hear what that sounds like alongside with me. In any case, the Nintendo Switch Lite was released, yada yada. Keanu Reeves is in the romance option in Cyberpunk 2077. Shed a tear, everybody. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this particular story item, though. PlayStation State of Play announced for next week. Now, this is exciting because the State of Play is a particular event that PlayStation and Sony put on occasionally, not as consistently as most people would hope, but that's because they're not always so great. But they're announcing this one. From what I understand, there have been a couple where they didn't really put out the word early. They kind of just, but this one, they're almost building hype for it. So that tells me that they got something good. Because this is Sony we're talking about. They have got this game down. Have you seen the way they've run the PlayStation 4? They have been killing it. And the way they adapted, like them leaving E3, I thought was the smartest decision they could have made. That was great. It was cementing themselves as king, almost. And here they are getting excited. I'm like, oh man, what does that mean? We do have confirmed The Last of Us Part 2 will be there. I don't care. I don't want to see any more of The Last of Us Part 2. I'm just ready to play the game, so when that comes out, I'll play it. If they have the release date, great. I'll read that headline. That's it. I'm not gonna watch another trailer. I'm just ready to play it. Give me the game. But I also think other stuff's gonna be there, and I'm curious. I am curious. That's Tuesday, so keep that in mind. Tuesday o'clock for PlayStation State of Play. Last of Us Part 2 at the very least. Our last news item from this week is, of course, one for my buddies. So I have a lot of good video gaming friends, and most of them, if not all of them, are insanely addicted to Apex Legends. Apex Legends, the game released this last year, is, of course, kind of a Fortnite knockoff, kind of its own thing, a Titanfall universe-based game, and it is first-person shooter, and I think that's why my friends connected to it outside of Fortnite, because they all were growing up on first-person shooters with Call of Duty. Like I said before, we played that a lot. And in fact, I'm going to tie this way back to something real quick because I've always wanted to do this. Apex Legends developers, and I know that most people know this, but I just love this little tidbit. Apex Legends developers are essentially, or at least some of them, are the same people who made Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare at Infinity Ward. Some of the main execs broke off, left the company. It was a big deal, and they formed their own company, Respawn. They joined EA. They got into Titanfall. Things weren't so great, but Titanfall was great gunplay. It was that Call of Duty 4 goodness times 10. And now they've taken that Call of Duty goodness times 10 and put it into this beautiful, fantastic battle royale game called Apex Legends. And my friends who grew up on Call of Duty 4, all of a sudden, that little hook, they didn't even realize that the developers were the same. And that's what I think is cool. They didn't even realize these are the same people who have been connecting with them ever since they were little children. And here they are getting rehooked on the same developers' games. And I love that. I don't know. I think it's just great. In any case, they love Apex Legends. I love Apex Legends because of that. I do play it occasionally. I try to play more single-player games, though, because that's just my jam. That's my beat, if you know what I mean. But their Season 3 is being released October 1st, and I'm pretty excited about that. And that's a little piece of news for my buddies, because they're all about the seasons. You know what I'm saying? Fortnite's got their seasons, Apex got its seasons. And here they go, releasing their new season with a new character, new map updates. So it should be pretty cool. I'm excited to see what goes on. They've already changed so much of the game, and same with Fortnite. I was looking at a stream a second ago just to see what the Fortnite Cross Batman was, and they got mechs and freaking everything in that game now. It's insanity. I don't even understand. Like, I do, but I don't at the same time. Well, that's going to have to do it for news this week. I know it was a little bit more eccentric, but just trying to get through, and as I got through, my blood just started rushing through my entire internal system of veins. And so now I feel out of breath. But to wrap it up, let's go ahead and talk about my favorite video game for this week. So my favorite video game, a highlight, and I don't always go with relevant games, like I said. So buyer beware for this particular podcast. But I'm going to immediately go back on that because I want to talk about Link's Awakening. Man, I love this game. I just want to put that out there. It's the best $60 I've spent in 2 days. But it's great. I got it yesterday. I've been playing it. I'm about 4 dungeons in already. I've put several hours in. I want to beat the game right now. I want to run back and play it right now. But I can't. And that's because I'm recording this. But in any case, Link's Awakening is incredibly great. And it's based off of the original Game Boy Advance game. So this is a Legend of Zelda game from Nintendo. And they are remaking one of their old games. This is a classic Game Boy game. And maybe I'll put up some footage of the original. This thing looks wild old. And I know that that's hilarious for people who played it. Because you feel old now too. You are! You're old! This game is old and so are you! In any case, I actually played Link's Awakening a few years back on the recommendation of IGN.com's Brian Altano, who of course raves about the game constantly. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was hard. It's a bit obtuse because it's older. And I don't necessarily like to deal with obtuse games if I don't have to, especially with the plethora of games out there that are a lot more accessible. But with Zelda, I always make the exception. I try to push through. I dropped off at one point. I played a lot of it, and I always wanted to go back. And I really dug the game because it was so unique in the Zelda franchise. And now that I'm saying this out loud, I hate myself for never finishing it because I'm playing it again as I'm on the Nintendo Switch. So they took this game, the original Game Boy game, they've totally rehauled it. It's basically a new game, but it is a complete homage to Link's Awakening. This is the way to remaster a game or to remake a game right here. This is the blueprint for anybody who's interested, any developer out there. Here's how you do it. Look at Link's Awakening. They took the ideas and they upgraded them. That's all they did. It's not about the graphics. It's not about the gameplay, of course, is important. But even the gameplay has been upgraded, as it were, in systems of inventory and things along the map, and different types of hints and clues have been upgraded to the modern time to make this game a lot more vibrant and beautiful and fun and less obtuse and more exciting and less frustrating. It still is a little obtuse for a modern game, but it's well worth it. So you play as Link, you go across the map, of course, and you're slaying baddies and bouncing around. But Link, I just want to tell you, looks like the cutest little chibi character in this game. They've really nailed this art style in an insane, beautiful way. These guys look like plushies, like toys, like little things you want to squeeze, like everywhere. And it's tying back to the small feel of the Game Boy game, that old little console that you had in your hand. And Link was there, but he was small. He was a cutesy little dude. And he wasn't even colored in the first release. He was literally black and white. And now they're capturing that. And I love that. They didn't do the same thing. And they didn't try to upgrade it and make it cool. They took the idea, that cutesy little Game Boy game, and they upgraded it. And now it's a fantastic console game that I recommend to absolutely everybody on the Nintendo Switch. There are tons of different breakdowns of it. Go watch a trailer. You'll fall in love immediately. And I guarantee you will enjoy the game. If you go into the game really trying to invest yourself in the world, you will get so much out of it. I'm just going to put it just like that. The little moments, the characters are amazing. They're goofy. There's a crocodile that sells bananas. There are references to other Nintendo games. Link can jump in this one. It's great. I honestly, the more I've been playing it, the more I remembered how much I enjoyed the hours I put into the original, and the more I want to go back and play it, and the more I want to play all the Zelda games. This is what happens every time. And I'm incredibly biased, I will say that. Skylar, your opinion of Zelda is the worst. But I just can't believe how Nintendo nails these games over and over and over, and how I fall in love with their series so many different ways and so many different times of my life. And here I am falling in love with The Legend of Zelda again, and I can't help myself. I can't help myself from not talking about it this week. So that was released. You guys should go get it. Play your heart out. I love it, and you'll love it too. Guaranteed. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. We're going to be going into our next phase of series study here soon. Hopefully I'm done with the next Uncharted article for the blog. This is, of course, updates for the blog now. I didn't really say anything about that before I jumped into it, but this is updates for the blog now, and I'm talking about Uncharted series study, specifically my next piece. I'm going to be talking about the major tropes of Uncharted, the original, and how those have carried through the series. And it's a cool little breakdown, really interesting to see how Naughty Dog grew as developers and who they and how their games grew. And I'll be pointing out small differences here and there, mostly focused on the original game. And yeah, so you can be looking out for that. Hopefully I'll have my Persona 5 piece up as well. Be looking out for this podcast in video form, and of course the clips coming out later this week. Until then, again, you guys can email me at joshua.gallegos.freelance@gmail.com. It's joshua.gallegos.freelance@gmail.com. That'll be in the description below. If you want to ask me any questions about gaming, different news relevancy, things that are going on this week, I will incorporate those into the show, and we can discuss them together. Let's do this, guys, and let's explore games and learn something new. Thanks for listening.